If you were to take a look in my Steam library, you'd see two major genres, bullet hells and roguelikes. Unsurprisingly, many of these actually overlap. For those of you who don't know, roguelike is a style of game characterized by one major aspect, permadeath. If you die, your current run is over and you have to restart at the beginning. This doesn't mean an entirely fresh file, however. Take Binding of Isaac for example. You start in the basement, making your way down all the way into places like the chest, darkroom, or even corpse. Once you die, the run is over and you restart back in the basement. However, you may have unlocked new items to find during your next run, or you just know how the different bosses work now and can progress even further. Now, let's take a look at the other genre, bullet hells. These are games whose combat system is primarily, if not entirely, projectile based, but it's not just a single projectile here and there. In some instances, enemy shot patterns can actually take up most or all of the screen and require incredibly precise movements in order to duck, dodge, and weave through it all. Combine the two and what do you get? Well, most of you probably immediately think of the 2016 release Enter the Gungeon, developed by Dodge Roll and published by Devolver Digital. Today, we're looking at the other bullet-hell roguelike, Starward Rogue, released on January 22nd, 2016, about 2.5 months prior to Gungeon. Developed and published by Arcen Games, Starward Rogue may be another bullet hell, but it's still incredibly different. Starward Rogue has relatively basic controls. WASD for movement, while using your mouse to aim, left click to fire your main weapon, and the right click being for your secondary weapon, which each mech has a unique one to start with. Control allows you to speed around much faster than normal, though it's definitely not recommended during combat. Conversely, Shift allows you to slow yourself down, which can be incredibly helpful during some boss fights, or rather just combat in general. Lastly, the spacebar uses your missiles. Missiles work in a similar vein to blanks from Gungeon, as they can destroy incoming bullets. Though if you're able to directly hit an enemy with one, it can deal a good chunk of damage. Remember how I said each mech has a unique secondary weapon to start with? Yeah, there's 12 total. Well, 9 in the base game and another 3 with a DLC. The DLC is not needed at all to play the game, but the mechs it adds certainly provide a much different way to play the game. From a literal glass cannon, who deals heaps of damage but can be literally one-shot, to a mech that uses its in-game currency to fire its secondary weapon. Think Magic Fingers from Binding of Isaac. Let's take a look at some of these mechs a bit more in depth. If you don't want to hear how they work, you can skip to this timestamp here or just select the Mechanics chapter to skip over all of this. First up is White Gloss. This is your standard mech, your Isaac if you will. Average stats all around, except for slightly higher starting health. Starting with a basic minigun for a starting weapon, which honestly isn't all that exciting. However, its secondary rain cannon is quite excellent at crowd control, as seen here. The bullet travels a short distance before exploding into over 20 smaller bullets, which bounce around for a short period or until they hit an object or enemy. Next up is the Flame Tank. Where White Gloss was more of a jack of all trades style mech, this one is an interesting choice. Its main weapon is a flamethrower, with incredibly high attack speed, though suffering from low base damage. The secondary weapon is the Guardian Blaster, a powerful wave of shots that can even destroy enemy projectiles similar to missiles. However, at the start, this mech is only capable of firing it once per room, so until you upgrade your energy reserves, use it carefully. Flame Tank also comes with extra missile capacity, and an extra shield. Shields are relatively self-explanatory. They work like soul hearts from Isaac or armor pierces from Gungeon. They save you from one hit each, though they do recharge each room, so I guess they'd work closer to the Holy Mantle from Isaac than anything. You may have noticed that I've been making references to other roguelike games, and that's deliberate. This game is obviously not as well known as the others, so using well-known items or mechanics from the more well-known roguelikes will help you guys understand it better. Alright, back to the mechs. The Indigo Dipole is perhaps the most defensive out of the starting 6 mechs thanks to its missile launcher and secondary weapon. The launcher it starts with attracts enemy shots into it like a magnet. Once fired, it'll travel a short distance until stopping for a moment, before continuing until hitting either its max range or an object. While active, any enemy bullets will automatically be dragged to it and hopefully away from you. Its secondary weapon, the repulsive mine, works very similar to an enemy shot you see early in the game. Once you place it down, it'll act as a shield. Any bullets that hit will be blocked. After a short period, it'll explode into smaller bullets with a very short range. With enough energy, you probably could set up a mini wall for yourself. The fourth base mech is Green Envy, a treasure mech. This mech doesn't have too much going for it in terms of power or defense right off the bat. In fact, the missile launcher it starts with is weaker than usual, though it does have a much larger blast range. The special thing about this mech, however, is the sheer amount of loot and pickups you can get. Each time you kill an enemy, along with XP. Did I mention there are levels? We'll get to that later. The mech has a 10% chance to get a credit, 5% chance for a missile ammo, and 2% chance for a keycard. This rolls for every single enemy killed. This mech can also find items a floor earlier, meaning an item that would normally be found on floor 3, this mech can find on floor 2. The secondary weapon of this mech is probably one of the most fun in my opinion. You're basically equipped with a triple shot machine gun. I mean, look at this! The main downside is that it's incredibly inaccurate. Deep Blue starts out weak, but helps make up for it with the fun drone buddy. This one specifically fires out beams at enemies to make up for the damage your main weapon lacks. The drones mainly act as similar to familiars from Isaac, each one able to do a different thing, with the beam drone being the most basic. The secondary weapon of Deep Blue also helps potentially to make up for some lost damage, being a charge shot. Take aim and charge up to deal some hefty damage. One thing to pay attention with this mech is that whenever you acquire an item, augment, or really anything that affects your energy levels, it'll be multiplied by 1.5, regardless if positive or negative. Meaning an item that would normally give 20 extra energy now gives 30. Conversely, an item that would subtract 20 energy now subtracts 30. So be careful when picking up those kinds of items. Coming in at number 6 is the mech with probably the most unique special ability and my personal favorite, Redshift. This mech, I still haven't been able to get used to fully. Starting with the precision railgun and low-ranged minigun, it takes some getting used to. With your main weapon having lower range, you'll have to get in a tad closer for main combat, though the precision railgun gets stronger the farther its shot travels before hitting an enemy, dealing up to 5 times its normal damage at max range. What's fun about this mech is that it pairs fantastically with Redshift's special ability, Time Manipulation. Have you ever played Super Hot? This is the Super Hot mech. Whenever you're not moving or shooting, every enemy and their shots stand completely still. If you shoot your main weapon or move, time will begin again. This makes for situations where you can just stop and think about how you want to dodge the current barrage of bullets coming after you. Be careful when you start moving again though, because everything else will. I'll leave it here and let you discover what the other 3 mechs have in store should you decide to pick up this game. Next up, we'll be looking at the controls and basics of the game. As previously stated, it's standard WASD controls, with left shift for a crouch or focus mode, and control for sprinting. Each mech comes with a primary and secondary weapon, as well as a missile launcher. There are a few different types of upgrades for each mech as well. Consumables are pretty self-explanatory. They provide a one-time effect and disappear upon consumption. These effects can range from extra pickups like XP, credits, keycards, all the way to bonus effects like your shots bouncing off the walls for the entire floor. After that, we have the standard upgrades, things like movement speed, damage, fire rate. It's all relatively basic stat ups. The final items are modules. These are upgrades that you can only equip one at a time, and these effects vary greatly. From adding a Poison Nova burst when you fire, to a fiery or icy AoE burst every couple seconds, just straight up adding extra shots to your main gun. You'll have to think carefully which module you'll want to keep equipped. Some modules are even exclusive to the Sacrifice shop. Think the Devil Deal Rooms from Binding of Isaac. Sacrifice maximum health for an item you couldn't get otherwise. You'll be warned, these items may be strong, but it's also a very tough choice on whether or not to sacrifice your health for them, as max health is a lot tougher to come by. Speaking of strong items, we should talk about the secondary weapons. These are weapons that have more unique functions, but can only be used a limited amount of times each room, as they require energy to use. Different secondary weapons use different amounts of energy, so be careful when swapping out for others. If you run out of energy, don't worry, it refills to full upon entering a different room. Sometimes there are even generators on the ground that gradually refill it while you fight. Now, what's a roguelike without shops? Throughout each floor, you'll run into a variety of shops that sell various items and upgrades. From the cheap item shop, which mostly consists of small upgrades like 5% extra damage, 20% energy, or a little bit of rate of fire. Or you can even run into the drone shop, which will sell you your own personal drone buddy to help you while in combat. If you want to add a major kick of an extra challenge, feel free to shoot the shopkeep. He will fight back, but if you kill him, you can activate some various challenge runs. Personally, I haven't been able to do any of them as they are genuinely difficult. I'd obviously be remiss if I failed to talk about the soundtrack. Starward Rogue boasts a small but energetic OST of about 9 different tracks, a majority of which were composed by Pablo Vega, I do hope I'm pronouncing your name right, and a couple by the Overthinkers. None of the tracks have standard names, most are titles like TFL-1023 or something along those lines. The one thing does remain consistent through all of the tracks: the immense electronic energy. Once again, these videos are meant to be just a small snippet into games that sometimes fly under the radar. A couple years ago, I was contacted by one of the developers of this game and even had the opportunity to give away some Steam keys while on stream. Hell, I'm even mentioned in their wiki alongside a friend of mine. I'm really sorry it took me so long to get this video out. From work to social life to other content, it just kept getting pushed back. On top of the fact that about halfway through I just genuinely lost motivation for a bit. If you guys enjoyed, please consider dropping a like or even subscribing. If you want to see more content, consider giving me a follow over on Twitch, as I also stream over there a variety of roguelike games, such as Realm of the Mad God, to other roguelikes, like Lethal Company. I hope everybody has a fantastic day, night, afternoon, whatever time it is for you. Peace!